So if today has a theme, I'm thinking about it as the three M's. Mary, Merlin and Mothman. And we're now going to have the first one. So, one of SPI's leading lights and the person in charge of SPI Scotland is the Reverend Alyson Dunlop. She is a demonologist. There's plenty of those around today, but she's also an angelologist, a deaconess, and she's also a classicist with her degree from this university. She's had many personal paranormal experiences, and many of you will know Alyson also for hosting an excellent podcast on the paranormal called the ADX Files. I'd be most grateful if you could join me to talk about Marian Apparitions, the Reverend Alyson Dunlop.
Good morning, everyone. So, Marian Apparitions, apparitions of the Virgin Mary. Historically, most apparitions have been reported in Europe. The Virgin's favourite destination appears to be Italy and France. No surprise there, they're predominantly quite Roman Catholic countries. However, they do happen on a global scale. Hope you can see that all right, because the lights are quite bright here. Sometimes witnessed by thousands. You can see that most of them happen in America, down the east coast there. Typically, they happen in a time of crisis, often to children from humble backgrounds, and sometimes the child or the children are the only ones to be able to perceive the vision. If the Virgin speaks, she may ask for a chapel to be built, request that the faithful are more devout than ever before, or she may bring a warning for the future. Now, as you might expect, these visions have been the subject of ridicule. And true enough, some of them have been perpetrated by fraudsters. As I say, they are associated with Roman Catholicism, and they most they occur in regions mostly inhabited by Roman Catholics. But they are embraced by other denominations and faiths as being of importance, and some people of other faiths have seen her. I'll talk about that later. So, for example, this is a photo taken in Mount Athos in 1903. It's in northeast Greece. It's an important centre for Eastern Orthodox monasticism. It allegedly shows an image of Mary. I don't believe it does, but this is a photo. These monks, from what I can understand from the translation, had just lost the charity of a Russian monastery, and only monk Gabriel, who took the photo, saw the image of this woman. He interpreted it as being Mary. And there are other examples of Mary appearing at Greek monasteries, although again the stories are a bit lost in translation. It seems, though, that from what I read, these stories seem to coincide with monasteries in need of money, so you can make of that what you will. If they are real, it's more difficult to find much real evidence, because often the vision is seen by just one or a handful of people. But that's the case of many paranormal and supernatural things. Even if it happened yesterday, it's still very hard to get real evidence. We often rely on the word of the person experiencing the event, and that's very much the case with these visions. We could speculate that they are shamanic visions, a hallucination, human deception, either by the supposed seer or by a third-party scheme to ensure that the seer is convinced. All these things are possible in most, if not all, cases. But what's interesting to know is the amount of times it's young children, often shepherd children, out in lonely areas with no other witnesses around. Many of the prophecies are apocalyptic in nature. They often have the same message in common. A great apostasy, which is an abandonment or a renunciation of religious beliefs. The arrival of an antichrist. That fire will fall from the sky. That hell has been unleashed upon the earth. That the Catholic Church will suffer from a Masonic and secular spirit, that the Church will suffer a massive shortage of vocations, that the Virgin will crush the head of the serpent, and that there is to be an era of peace after all that, thank goodness. One apparition that everyone will no doubt be familiar with is Our Lady of Lourdes, witnessed by Bernadette in 1858. The visions appear to her 18 separate occasions. Different from many of the visions I'll look at today, Our Lady of Lourdes offered purified healing water. And water is very significant because it's regarded by believers as a holy sacrament. It's the gate of spiritual life, to quote Pope Eugene IV. Another familiar one for everyone is Fatima, where in October 1917, 3 children saw visions of both Archangel Michael and the Virgin Mary. Here are the 3 children: Lucia Santos and her 2 cousins, Francisco Marto and Jacinto Marto. On the 3rd visit, they said that they were shown a vision of hell. One of the children, Lucia, later described it as a sea of fire, filled with demons and souls in human form, like transparent embers, all blackened or burnished bronze, floating about in a conflagration, now raised into the air by the flames that issued from within themselves, together with great clouds of smoke, amid shrieks and groans of pain and despair which horrified us. They claimed that they were told this was where the souls of sinners would go. This, again, of course, was met with ridicule. And so the Virgin said that she would perform a miracle so that all would believe. She gave a time and location. The date was October the 13th. Those that went were not all believers. Some were sceptics who were opposed to the whole thing. The crowds were made up, therefore, of believers, press and secular, and an estimated 70,000 people turned up. The apparition's final words to the children were, "People must not offend our Lord any more, for he is already greatly offended." And then she pointed to the sun. The rain stopped, the clouds disappeared, and the sun shone in a clear sky. Then it turned a silverish colour and began shooting out bursts of various coloured lights. It revolved, and then it fell towards the crowd in a fiery orange ball. Now that all sounds very dramatic, but at the end of my talk, I have a video to show you, and I think you might be quite surprised at some of the, I suppose, atmospheric phenomena that might occur that people may associate with visions of Mary. And I've also looked at photos and videos of sundogs. This one was taken this year in Ontario. It's an atmospheric phenomenon caused by the refraction of sunlight by ice crystals. However, typically, from what I've seen and what I've read, they don't display all of the characteristics of what was reported at Fatima. But why does a supernatural woman appear to people? At Fatima, the Virgin was very specific about her reason for being there. She sought peace and an end to the war, which was World War I. But her request was that Russia be consecrated to her Immaculate Heart by the Pope and all the bishops at the same time. One of the children, Lucia, went on to become a nun. Now, Sister Lucia described in writing during the 1980s that the consecration performed by Pope John Paul II in St. Peter's Square in the Vatican City, March the 25th, 1984, had been properly accomplished and was accepted in heaven. Lights and orbs are an important part of Marian manifestations. This one is from Zeytun in Cairo. It's a Coptic Orthodox church. The sighting was first approved by the Patriarch of the Coptic Church and then by Pope Paul VI. Often there is a bright light, an orb which appears first, and the Virgin then emerges from the light or steps out from it. At Select, the visionary Melanie was the first to see an intensely bright globe of light at the top of the mountain. Both she and the other child present had to shield their eyes from the light of the globe as it grew bigger and began to open. And it revealed a seated woman with her head in her hands. She then stood up and spoke to them. "Come, my children, do not be afraid. I am here to tell you great news." And then they saw her emerge from the globe of light. The children said that she wasn't part of the light, she was quite distinct from it. In Fatima, where the 3 small children tended their flocks in 1917, 13th of May, suddenly there was a bright flash of something similar to lightning. Initially, they thought a thunderstorm must be approaching, but to their surprise, the sky was clear and there was no wind, no rain clouds. They were just about to go home, just in case it was a storm, when suddenly there was another flash. They looked up to see, as one of the children, Lucia, said, a lady clothed in white, brighter than the sun, radiating a light more clear and intense than a crystal cup filled with sparkling water lit by burning sunlight. In her second memoir, Lucia tells us that a couple of years before, in 1915, she and some young friends had seen a mysterious being, which she describes as follows. "We saw a figure poised in the air above the trees. It looked like an almost statue, made of snow, rendered transparent by the rays of the sun." In the spring of 1916, while she was with Francisco and Jacinta, the 2 children from the famous 1917 sighting, so this was the year before, they were interrupted by a strong wind and it shook the trees. She continued in her memoirs, "Then we saw something coming towards us above the olive trees. The figure I have already spoken about. Jacinta and Francisco had never seen it before, nor had I ever mentioned it to them. As it drew closer, we were able to distinguish its features. It was a young man, about 14 or 15 years old, whiter than snow, transparent as crystal when the sun shines through it, and of great beauty." Ida Peerdeman, a woman from Amsterdam who reported 56 visions, claimed that she saw Mary on 25th of March 1945. She described her experience as follows. I suddenly saw a light and said to myself, where is this light coming from? What a curious light. There was one sea of light in an empty space, and out of it I suddenly saw a figure moving forward, a female figure. The apparition appearing out of a very bright light. As I said before, it's a recurring theme, and it was particularly a recurrent theme with this visionary. Another example in Kentucky, where a woman called Sandy claimed visions and supernatural sounds were experienced by her during the 1990s. She described her vision of Mary as follows. I heard a sound, I've heard this sound before. It's like a musical, heralding type sound from off in space. Then I looked up and I saw brightness, and she, Mary, started to appear through this brightness. Although it didn't involve Mary, the theme of light and illumination has been witnessed in other ways. In 1950, Pope Pius XII testified to seeing what was called the miracle of the sun on 4 separate occasions. He wrote, I have seen the miracle of the sun. This is the pure truth. His note says that at 4 p.m. on October the 30th, 1950, during his habitual walk in the Vatican gardens, reading and studying, having arrived to the statue of Our Lady of Lourdes, he said, the sun, which was still quite high, looked like a pale, opaque sphere, entirely surrounded by a luminous circle. And he said that the sun could be looked at directly without any problem, and that there was a light little cloud in front of it. The opaque sphere moved outward slightly, either spinning or moving from left to right and vice versa. But within the sphere, you could see marked movements with total clarity and without interruption. He talks about seeing this phenomenon on the 31st of October, the 1st of November, which are All Saints' Eve and All Saints' Day, so Halloween, the 31st of October, All Saints' Eve, and on the 8th of November. Back in 1940, Pope Pius XII had approved the Fatima apparitions, and in 1942 he had consecrated the entire world to the Immaculate Heart of Mary. There are so many Marian apparitions, and I just wouldn't possibly have time to look at them all in depth, but I'm going to look through a few famous ones and some not so famous ones, and finish up by looking at Medjugorje in a little bit more depth. Our Lady of Walsingham, 1061. A Marian apparition allegedly appeared to Lady Rakeldis. During a religious ecstasy, Mary took the soul of Rakeldis, according to her, from England to Nazareth to show the house where the Holy Family once lived and where the Annunciation of Archangel Gabriel occurred. Rakeldis said that she was told to build a replica house in her village in England, and that became known as the Holy House, and you can visit Walsingham still today. Mary of Guadalupe. Unlike many of the visions of Mary, this is not particularly prophetic in nature. There was a man called Juan Diego who witnessed the apparition of Mary on a hill called Tepeyac. He described her as the woman clothed with the sun. And when he told the Archbishop asked for a sign himself so he could believe. On the second visit, Juan claimed that the Virgin told him to fill his tilma, which is an outer garment worn by men, told him to fill his tilma with roses, which he did. And then upon opening it, the image of Mary had magically appeared on the tilma. Within 8 years, it's said that 9 million people had converted. Now what's interesting is that the locals also identified her with Tonantzin, a female deity who was also venerated on the hill of Tepeyang. And we'll see that same phenomenon of Mary appearing at a former pagan god's worship site when we look at Medjugorje. Our Lady of Good Success, 1628, in Quito, Ecuador. Mother Mariana de Jesus Torres experienced many visions of the Virgin Mary. The prophecies claimed that there would be much immorality in society and many fallen souls. She mentioned the rise of Masonry, so I've got this again, and the end of the sacraments of marriage and confession. Now, Masonry was not officially or publicly established until 1717, from what I've read. That I don't know if that's accurate, but that's what I've read. It may have been the case that it did exist as a secret society before that. It may simply be that Father Pereira, who wrote about the Quito apparition in the 18th century, was interpreting the information through his own eyes and for his own agenda, because he was very anti-Freemason. So we really have to be aware of people's different agendas when we're examining information, looking at the evidence. Apparently Mother Mariana and 5 of her fellow nuns are allegedly incorruptible and they've not decomposed after their death. Our Lady of the Miraculous Medal, Paris in 1830. The visionary Sister Catherine said that when she woke on the 21st of April, about 11:30, her room was filled with a bright light. A voice called out her name. She opened her curtains. A child stood in front of her, wearing a long white gown and carrying a candle. He told her to go to the chapel, where he said that the Blessed Virgin was waiting for her. Sister Catherine entered the chapel. She said there was another bright light and she saw the Blessed Virgin descend the steps of the altar to the priest's chair. She was told that she lived in evil times, that sorrows would come upon France, and that the throne would be overturned. Within the week, Mary's prediction, or whoever she was, this woman, Mary's prediction came true. Riots broke out in the streets of Paris. The king was deposed and fled. Revolutionary forces slaughtered priests and the religious. On the 29th of April, Catherine had a second vision. Mary told her to have a medal made in the likeness of this vision here. It took some time, but eventually permission was given from the Archbishop to allow the medal to be made. And there was an official church inquiry which concluded this medal is of supernatural origin. The wonders worked through it are genuine. Our Lady of the Golden Heart, 1932. Between November 1932 and January 1933, the Virgin Mary appeared a total of 33 times to 5 children. The children were aged between 9 and 15. And this took place in the small Belgian town of, I hope I pronounce this properly, Borang. The lady dressed in a long white robe said that she was the Immaculate Virgin. The lady requested that a chapel be built at the site of her apparition and asked the children and everybody to pray. In 1933, the Virgin of the Poor, a few days after the Virgin's last apparition in Borang, she appeared in the nearby town of Bano. 12-year-old Mariette Biko was looking out the window when she saw a bright glowing shape hovering above the vegetable garden. She then saw a lady in a white gown and blue sash. And eventually Mariette persuaded her mother to also look out, but her mother didn't see the woman. She did see, however, a white shape hovering over the garden. This is a photo of Mariette. Now, the only person who believed her was her father, and he went with her to the garden 3 nights later, and there she saw another vision. She got down on her knees and started praying. She started praying the rosary. She claimed to see the lady once more descend from the sky and hover a few feet above the ground. Her father and some villagers followed her to a small spring where the Virgin asked Mariette to put her hands in. The Virgin ordained it for healing for all nations, and she asked for a small chapel to be built there. Thereafter, the spring began to provide many healing miracles for those who touched the water. Back to Sister Lucia, 1952, who's one of the children from Fatima. She went on to become a nun, as I said earlier. She declared, "What Our Lady wants is for the Holy Father and all the bishops to consecrate Russia to her Immaculate Heart in a special ceremony. If the consecration is made, the Blessed Virgin will convert Russia and peace will reign in the world. Otherwise, Russia will spread her errors throughout the world." And in May 1952, she said, "Make it known to the Holy Father that I continue to wait for the consecration of Russia to my Immaculate Heart. Without this consecration, Russia will not convert and the world will not enjoy peace." And as I said before, this apparently in 1984 did happen. This is Akita in Japan, 1973 to 79. It's a story of restored hearing and stigmata. On the left is a statue, a wooden statue venerated by the Japanese, who believe it to have miraculous powers. The image is in the likeness of a Marian apparition reported in 1973 by Sister Agnes Katsuko Sasagawa in Akita, Japan. Sister Agnes was deaf, and in 1973 she reported apparitions and stigmata. The wooden statue was said to have wept 101 times, and the nuns reported stigmata on the statue itself. Instructions for saying prayer, especially the rosary, was advised. Prophecies about heresy and persecution of the Catholic Church was also mentioned. Sister Agnes was told to recite the prayer of the handmaids of the Eucharist, which Mary said would cure her deafness. I'm presuming that she was getting these messages telepathically, which is often the case. She said that calamities were approaching and that she, Mary, was the only one who could help. Cardinal Ratzinger described a later message as being, in essence, the same message as the third message given by Our Lady of Fatima. It said the statue then became animated and that this was witnessed by some of the nuns in the convent. Now, this is a rather long quote. I think it's actually quite an important one to read out, considering the state of the Catholic Church today and the things that are happening within it. "My dear daughter, listen well to what I have said to you. You will inform your superior. As I told you, if men do not repent and better themselves, the Father will inflict a terrible punishment on all humanity. It will be a punishment greater than the deluge, such as one will never have seen before. Fire will fall from the sky and will wipe out a great part of humanity, the good as well as the bad, sparing neither priests nor faithful. The survivors will find themselves so desolate that they will envy the dead. The only arms which will remain for you will be the rosary and the sign left by my son. each day recite the prayer of the Rosary. With the Rosary, pray for the Pope, bishops and priests. The work of the devil will infiltrate even into the church in such a way that one will see cardinals opposing cardinals and bishops against other bishops. The priests who venerate me will be scorned and opposed by their confreres, churches and altars sacked. The church will be full of those who accept compromises, and the demon will press many priests and consecrated souls to leave the service of the Lord. The demon will be especially implacable against souls consecrated to God. The thought of the loss of so many souls is the cause of my sadness. If sins increase in number and gravity, there will be no longer pardon for them. With courage, speak to your superior. He will know how to encourage each one of you to pray and to accomplish works of reparation. It is Bishop Ito who directs your community. You have still something to ask? Today is the last time that I will speak to you in living voice. From now on, you will obey the one sent to you and your superior. Pray very much the prayers of the Rosary. I alone am able still to save you from the calamities which approach. Those who place their confidence in me will be saved. Now, I found that quite an important quote, as I say, with everything that has come out in the news recently about priests. And that quote was from 1973, that was said. So you can have a think about that. In 1974, Sister Agnes, so the following year, she suddenly experienced an improvement in hearing. But then she began to have violent headaches and hearing loss, and she was diagnosed as having hearing loss in both ears. She was told that it was incurable. And again, in 1982, Sasagawa experienced another sudden improvement in hearing. So by 1982, June 1982, the doctor, Sawada, attested that her hearing was fully restored. Medjugorje. I was very drawn to Medjugorje. I'd never heard of it until a few months ago, and then all of a sudden I was hearing about it all the time. So it's a town in Bosnia and Herzegovina near the border of Croatia. In 1981, 6 local children witnessed an apparition of Mary. They said that a bright light illuminated the sky, and floating above the hill was the figure of a beautiful woman. She told them that she was the Virgin Mary. At that time, Bosnia and Herzegovina would still have been Yugoslavia and run by a communist regime, which is said to have put pressure onto the children to retract their stories. Some people still see these apparitions of Mary as a symbol of resistance. After Fatima, the church began an anti-communist regime campaign against the Iron Curtain countries, since Mary's message was one of conversion and penance for Russia. In Medjugorje, the people were still living under a fascist regime, but the situation was complex. It wasn't just a case of atheists against the religious. It was Bosnians against Serbs, Roman Catholics against Orthodox, but in any case, the local authorities took the children in for questioning on day 4, and they were examined by a psychiatrist who declared them to be normal, well-balanced and healthy. The tests done on the children showed them, however, to be in a state of ecstasy. Initially, the children felt persecuted, but then thousands came to Medjugorje, and some began to witness a strange light. Now it's said that these people, 50,000 people, turned up, and they were on the mountain within a few days. The authorities were probably at that point getting quite concerned about revolution, and there are stories of severe persecution and threats, which I'm not going to go into today. But still their visions came. And the children were each given 10 secrets. Most of them were warnings that unless the world repented, there would be much suffering and that we would face severe chastisement, pretty much like a lot of the other messages. The third secret is the one that has been partially revealed. It's about a visible sign that will be left at the apparition site, and believers consider it confirmation of Mary's presence, that she was amongst us. But that's, as far as I know, not happened yet. 3 of the seers still have daily visions. Most of the messages have come through, have urged people towards prayer, conversion, fasting, penance, and peace. Since then, strange anomalies have been reported. People have described visual phenomena such as the sun spinning, changing colours, or seeing hearts and crosses around the sun. This one was taken on the 13th of September 2017 and it allegedly shows a cross. I don't know if it's photoshopped, possibly. People have said that they've been cured of various ailments there, such as Elena Artioli, whose brain disease vanished after visiting the site. People have walked again and been cured of illness and addictions. On the other hand, some people have unfortunately suffered serious eye damage from looking directly at the sun in order to try to see the phenomena for themselves. Pope Benedict on the left sent a commission to investigate it in 1990. They concluded that the first appearances were most likely supernatural in nature, but they couldn't reach a finding on further appearances. Pope Francis, on the right, concluded that regardless, there was certainly a spiritual benefit for people going there to visit. It's also said that Satan is present in and around the sanctuary at Medjugorje, and people who are possessed have started to go into a demonic trance during Mass. This is taken from a video of a young girl experiencing possession and exorcism. It was posted on YouTube on the 4th of August 2013, but I'm not sure when it actually happened or who the young lady was. But I have the video and I can show you some of that as well. According to Vika Ivankovic, Mary said that we are a living church. We are a church. And this is why it's important to accept Medjugorje. Now, as soon as I heard Vika say that, it struck me as being a very Gnostic idea. I'm a Gnostic Christian, so I thought that's very interesting, her saying that. And it's possibly one that the Roman Catholic Church wouldn't like. It borders on heresy. And then on further investigation, I discovered that I was right. Medjugorje was a centre for the Bogomils, early Christian Gnostics, whose ideas were opposed to the church. Surprisingly too, the local Franciscan Father Zovko was an enthusiast for the charismatic movement, which involved the use of spiritual gifts, including healing and speaking in tongues. He was practically holding development circles. Several of the Franciscan fathers and the seers could be described as charismatic. There's a compelling case for us to assume something supernatural is happening at Medjugorje. However, any criticism is viewed by devotees as the voice of the devil. So there's very little critical analysis of events, and that makes it very difficult to give a balanced judgment. So, for example, Donald Anthony Foley in Medjugorje Revisited, 30 years of visions or religious fraud, argued that the older age of the witnesses at Medjugorje was at odds with visions at other sites. But that can't be said of the visionary at Akita, for example, and Sister Lucia of the Fatima visions was also still experiencing the phenomenon up until her death. So you can't have it both ways. So the visions of Mary happen to people of all ages. So Folly's argument doesn't stand for me. But like any investigation, it's important that a report's taken as early as possible. And in all cases, reports were recorded within a week or two of them happening. This was another argument that Foley made, that they didn't take the report quickly enough. But at Select, Melanie, one of two seers, had her story taken down, writing by her employer. That was just 2 days after the event. At Lourdes, Bernadette was questioned and a report was written. We've got a very, very full record of that. Again, 2 witnesses signed the report. At Fatima, the children were questioned and detailed reports were written. And at Barang, the 5 children, they were all questioned separately by a lawyer. At Bano, the local priest took careful reports from Marian after each apparition. And at Medjugorje, the tapes were made within the first few days of the first visions, and these tapes were then transcribed. So some have pointed to the fact that the initial sightings happened after Ivanka and Mariana had stolen cigarettes. This, they said, was evidence that the devil had a hand in matters. Apparently, visionaries at Garabandal had just stolen apples before their initial vision of an angel. Like Medjugorje, Garabandal has also never received church approval. Now, what I've definitely seen throughout this investigation of Marian Apparitions is the amount of bias on both sides, whether a believer or a skeptic. Both sides are determined that their evidence and thoughts explain the meaning of the visions, and they completely disregard any of the other evidence. They quite often twist the evidence either way. To finish up, someone who is here at the conference today emailed me when they saw that I was going to be speaking about Marian Apparitions. Now, this was just after I started being drawn to Medjugorje and seeing it everywhere. And I got this email, and he said that he had been to Medjugorje and that he wanted to share his experience with me. And he's kindly agreed to me telling you about it today. He said, although not a Catholic, I was always interested in Marian Apparitions. So much so that I travelled to Medjugorje in Bosnia in 1985 to meet the young visionaries there. I had a profound, life-changing experience there. Up a mountain with the young visionaries and around 30 people from around the world, Mother Mary allowed me to see her arrive in the form of a shooting star that did an impossible 90-degree turn and arrived right in front of me and then disappeared, only for the visionaries to begin speaking with her. The next thing I immediately experienced an overwhelming scent of 1,000,000 roses up the Rocky Mountain with no vegetation whatsoever. And as I breathed in this scent, it filled me with a powerful feeling of unconditional love that filled my whole being and made me cry with joy. After the apparition was over, one of the young visionaries came over to me and said Our Lady came over to me and kissed my forehead, hence the scent. I was the only one in the group who experienced this amazing experience. That was just the beginning of many more wonderful experiences of that 2-week trip. I saw many so-called miracles that I will share with you when I see you. After that, I travelled to Bosnia many times for more than 10 years, eventually becoming an aid worker during the horrific war that Mary warned us about 10 years earlier. I left there in December 1996 after the war ended, the last time that I was there. In conclusion, I think that when our sense of safety is removed, we feel at a deep level, perhaps a spiritual level. Looking at all these cases, the overall impression is that the visionaries were living in precarious times or situations, and maybe this is why Mary came to them with an answer. The remedies offered by these apparitions to our troubled world, as I said before, are prayer, conversion, fasting, penance, and peace. So is it all fake, or are we going to take that advice? Well, that's a personal decision that you can decide yourself. I said about Medjugorje, the similarity with Tepeyac, a mountain god was worshipped at Medjugorje from early times up until quite recently, until just before the Marian Apparitions started. So that was another one. Now, I just should have 5 minutes. Good, that's perfect. So I should just have time to show you one of these videos. I'll show you this one.
I'd like to share a few words with whoever's watching this movie of something very beautiful that happened to us. We had just been on a pilgrimage to Ngome, which is a Marian shrine in KwaZulu-Natal, or really in Zululand. We spent a very, very fruitful day, enjoyed ourselves, and the time came for us to leave. We left at about 4:30 in the afternoon. As we were driving past Dundee, Pat, my wife, sitting next to me, shouted out, "Oh, look at the sun!" And of course I was concentrating on my driving, and I said, I'm driving. But anyway, at that point, I saw her lift her camera, which is a Canon SX50, and start filming the sun. Now and again I was able to slow down a little bit and catch a glimpse of the sun. Unbelievable. I've never seen it ever like that before, although I have seen the sun spin once or twice. It's very difficult to explain, but the sun itself was like a very bright white disc, and there was a gold band around the sun, and it was this band that was dancing, exploding out, coming in. There were like big lumps of gold coming out of it and then flying away in the form of an orb. The other thing that we found really testing was the fact that the sun changed its size. It was like a soccer ball in size at the sunset, and then it would just open up and encompass the whole area around us, including the car. Everything got very bright, and then the sun would go back to its normal size again. Most amazing, absolutely amazing. I just wished everybody could have witnessed that, because that is a miracle. Definitely, as far as I'm concerned, it was a miracle. Interestingly enough, we were not afraid, we were not fearful. The ginormity of what was going on there certainly didn't affect us. We were awestruck at seeing this beautiful, beautiful event with the sun spinning, the sun expanding itself so large that it covered the whole area in front of us, and then going back to its normal size. The sun itself was always a bright white, but the gold band around it was what was doing the dancing. And beyond that gold band there was a beautiful sort of maroon band as well, which was also taking part in the dance. Why? I don't know. I really don't know. But I do believe it was a miracle. Certainly what we saw on that day was a miracle, probably perpetrated by Our Lady, because we had just been to visit her shrine, and certainly our Lord gave us the opportunity of seeing that there is beauty in what they do.
So if anyone maybe knows what that might have been, come and tell me, but that's it for now.
Right, ladies and gentlemen.